Well, hello and welcome, guys. I'm Desi Arnaz, professional investor, and I want to welcome you guys to our latest episode of the Invest Brilliantly broadcast. And today is an exciting day because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is a family legacy. You know, we all go out and work really hard every day in order to try to create something substantial in our lives, right? And for most of us, especially those of us that are parents, one of the big things that we want to do is we want to make life a little easier for our children and our grandchildren and so forth for the next generation, so to speak. And so we're going to talk about that today. Today's show is brought to you by the Note Investor University, where you can learn these strategies that we talk about here and so many more for investing your resources in brilliant fashion. You can just head over to noteinvestoruniversity.com and you can learn more there. So head on over to noteinvestoruniversity.com. So again, my name is Desi Arnaz, and I am your host today. So guys, as we take a look around here and think about all the things that are going on in our lives, right? There's always something that's going to be distracting to us, something that's taking our attention away from the things that we feel are valuable and important. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing something for your family and doing something with your family, in my opinion, you really are just really missing the boat. Okay, you're missing a fantastic opportunity. And so what I've been blessed to do is I've been blessed to be able to create a business that several members of my family are part of, and more members are joining from time to time, increasing our overall bond as a family, and also the opportunities for all of us to grow under one umbrella, which is really kind of cool, right? In my case, I get to work with my children, some of my grandchildren, and so forth. I mean, it's really been pretty awesome. You guys know that I love investing, right? I talk about investing, and that's why I started this broadcast, because I love talking about investing. And most of you guys, if you've seen my previous broadcast, then you know that my primary focus when I invest is to invest in something called mortgage-backed promissory notes. And for those of you that don't know what that is, since this is a show about investing, I'm going to just take a few minutes and share with you what a mortgage-backed promissory note is. I'll give you a little bit of history and it'll make sense. So basically it's this. When we invest in a mortgage-backed promissory note, what I'm basically doing is I'm buying the mortgage that someone has on their house. And what that means is this. Instead of that person sending their mortgage payment to their lender, to their current lender, like Bank of America, Chase, or some credit union, they will send their mortgage payments to me because I go to those lenders and I buy their position. I literally give them cash them out, and then I collect the payments for the next 30 years. It's a great way to invest because I get cash flow from the real estate without being a landlord. And that's a really cool thing to do. Plus, I get really good returns on my investments. Double-digit returns are not unusual. And so I like that. And then the third point is that these investments are very, very secure because there's something called collateral. And if you don't know what collateral is something that the lender can take from the borrower if the borrower fails to make their payments. For example, if you had a car and you financed it, the car is the collateral. If you don't make the car payment, the lender can come and repossess the car. Well, guess what? When I invest in mortgage-backed promissory notes, the real estate, the home or the office building or the shopping center, that is the collateral. And so if I don't get those monthly payments that were promised to me, then I can literally repossess the home, the shopping center, or whatever it happens to be. I can repossess it, take ownership of it, and then I can do whatever I want to do with it because it'll be mine. So if it's a house, I can rent it out, I can move into it, I can donate it to charity, right? I can sell it, I can Airbnb it, I can do anything I want to do with it because once I repossess it, it's mine. And I can do whatever I'd like to do with it. So it's a great way to invest. The risk is is low, especially compared to what most people invest their money in, and it produces cash flow without hassles. So that's why I like investing in mortgage-backed promissory notes. But before you get to the investments of mortgage-backed promissory notes, I do think that people should consider where they park their money. And that's what we're going to be talking about here a little bit today. And then how do they pass that money on to the next generation in the most efficient and effective way, right? And again, that's what we're going to be talking about in here today. So let me just share something with you guys. I want to share a little bit of I'll share my screen with you and show you guys a few things about mortgage-backed promissory notes that I think you're going to find intriguing. But before I do that, let me just say this. Most people don't know about this, and they certainly don't talk about it. I mean, think about it in your own family. How many times have you talked to your kids about a dynasty trust or family bank, right? So today I'm going to be talking about how to use something called a dynasty trust in order to pass wealth from generation to generation for hundreds of years. And so that's what we're going to show you. I'm going to show you talk about the one that I have created and how it has changed the dynamics in my own family. So if you're like most people, you have probably never spoken to your family and your kids about your family's dynasty trust. I mean, how many times did your parents or your grandparents talk with you about your family's dynasty trust? Probably never, right? Do you know who does, however, speak about their family dynasty trust regularly to their family members? Wealthy families do this, right? The patriarchs and the matriarchs of wealthy families tend to share this information with their kids, okay? I used to think, oh, they just pass money down, but they pass a lot more than money down, as you're going to see here as I explain this story a little bit deeper. Now, there's a book that I'm going to recommend that you guys take a look at. It's called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And it's written by a gentleman named Garrett Gunderson. In that book, he talks about the story of Cornelius Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller. Now, you probably have heard both of those names because both of those men were iconic in industry, right? Super, super successful, wealthy men. During the 19th century and the early 20th century, they amassed fortunes that in today's dollars would be larger than Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Mark Zuckerberg combined. Cornelius Vanderbilt made his money in transportation in the early 19th century. He was into shipping and railroads, and at his death in 1877, his fortune was estimated to be more than $100 million. Now, I know today that doesn't seem like, well, there's a lot of people with more money than that, but we're talking about 1877, okay? $100 million back then is like $200 billion today, billion with a B. So that's how wealthy he was even back in 1877. But he lived a relatively modest life. That was his style. He wasn't very flashy. He donated to charity. He gave $1 million to start the Vanderbilt University way back then, right? He also donated to churches and other places. 95% of his fortune, however, went to his son, William Henry Vanderbilt. And the remaining 5% of his fortune went to his surviving wife and his other children. Well, William Henry did pretty well, financially speaking. He actually doubled his family's fortune before he died 9 years after his father passed. But that was the last time that family's fortune would ever grow. The Vanderbilt heirs became known as wealthy socialites, right? They were what you might call we call them today trust fund babies, right? But wealthy socialites. They partied hard, right? They traveled the world. They lived lavish lifestyles. In fact, there was a time when there were 10 Vanderbilt mansions built just in Manhattan alone. 10 mansions just in Manhattan. and they were all owned by the Vanderbilts. However, nobody was minding the store. Nobody was doing anything to add any value to the world. Nobody was doing anything to bring any new money into the family. And without new money coming in, by the 1930s, all 10 of those mansions had been torn down. And a direct descendant of Cornelius Vanderbilt died broke just 48 short years after Cornelius died. And this happened because he failed to pass on a legacy of lasting wealth. The Vanderbilts are still around. We all heard of Gloria Vanderbilt, right? I know my wife likes her perfumes and some of her other products, right? Gloria Vanderbilt. So she's a part of that family. She grew up as a socialite, but she soon learned that her family's lifestyle was not sustainable. And so she started developing her own businesses in order to provide value to the world and to earn money for herself and her family. Another member of the Vanderbilt family that most of you guys might know is a gentleman named Anderson Cooper. That's right, the CNN anchor, Anderson Cooper. He's a Vanderbilt. So the Vanderbilts are still around, but their family and their family's name is no longer prominent or relevant. That's just the case with the Vanderbilts. Now, let's take a look at John D. Rockefeller. How did his family fare? John D. Rockefeller made his fortune in the oil business. He started a company called Standard Oil of Ohio back in 1870. And by 1880, just 10 short years later, he was providing 90% of all the oil used in the United States. He delivered the best oil for the cheapest price. He constantly reminded his employees that they were refining oil for the poor and that the poor deserved to have oil at good oil at cheap prices. And so he drove down the price of oil from 58 cents a gallon to 8 cents a gallon. And as a result, he became the richest man in American history. The New York Times reported that his wealth, in his 1937 obituary, they reported that his wealth had amassed a fortune of $1.5 billion in 1937. And in today's dollars, that would be about $300 billion. Okay? Now, to put that in perspective, Elon Musk, we know he's worth $138 billion. Well, this Rockefeller was worth $300 billion in today's dollars. And he was a prolific giver. He donated more than $530 million to charities during his lifetime. He also left $460 million to his son, John D. Rockefeller Jr. in 1917. But unlike the Vanderbilts, Jr. did something that the Vanderbilt family didn't do. Jr. kept the family's money together by creating a trust for each of his children. And then he hired a group of attorneys, accountants, and insurance experts and investment experts to manage these trusts. And this group of financial professionals is what we refer to today as a family office, right? That's what we call them today. And most wealthy people have a family office. These are professionals that just work for them. And if you study wealth, you're going to learn something pretty interesting. I thought this was pretty interesting. Most inherited wealth is squandered within just a couple of generations. And I know that comes as no surprise, but think about that. Most wealth is squandered in just a couple of generations. There's an old saying, I think it's a Chinese saying, it says, from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. You see, here's how it works. The first generation creates the wealth. And their kids, which is the second generation, they watch their parents work hard to create the wealth. And so they tend to manage the wealth responsibly, but they don't do much to increase or to grow the wealth. They just enjoy it. And then their kids, which is the third generation, they never saw grandma and grandpa sacrifice to create the wealth. They just grew up in families that had a lot of money. And so they become spoiled and they spend like drunken sailors. And that is the story of the Vanderbilts. But it's also the story of millions of families that have left an inheritance for their kids all over the place, right? Statistically speaking, 70% of the estate that you and I will leave behind is going to be wiped out by the next generation. And 90% by the third generation. Of all the work that you did to put something together, it just doesn't make it very far down the chain. And maybe you don't care, right? Maybe your attitude is, hey, you know what? I'm dead. I'm dead. So it doesn't really matter to me. And I get that. And if that's the case, then what I'm about to share with you just won't matter. Okay? However, if you would like to be the person that changes your family's financial destiny for generations to come, if you want to be the difference maker in your family's legacy, if you want your great, 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 great grandchildren to know your name, to know your values, and to know what you accomplished and what you stood for while you were alive, then stay with me, because that's exactly what I'm going to show you can be done and how to do it today. Now, the Rockefellers are on their sixth generation of wealth. And today, there's more than 150 direct descendants of John D. Rockefeller currently receiving and living on the interest income from the family trust. But they don't just get money. The terms of the trust also passes on John D. Rockefeller's values. One of his values, as I said, was he really believed in donating to charities. And so, in his trust, he literally put in the trust that the beneficiaries of this trust must donate money to charity every year. And I don't know how much, but it's in there. And so to this day, $50 million or more is donated to charitable causes by the Rockefeller Family Trust right now. That's happening to this day. So he didn't just pass money on to the next generation. He also passed on some of his values. Now, I doubt very much if the Vanderbilt family is donating $50 million a year to charity. So here's a lesson for each of us, okay? There are three things that we can do to follow the Rockefeller model. One is the Rockefellers kept the money together. You know, most people, when they're preparing their wills, they're preparing their trust, they say, oh, you know, I've got $1 million, for example. I've got $1 million. I've got 4 kids. So each one gets $250,000. Okay? And guess what happens to that $250,000 almost as soon as they get their hands on it? It is gone, baby. It's certainly, most of it will not make it to your grandchildren. And so in order to avoid that, sometimes people will say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give $200,000 to each of my 4 kids, and we're going to give $50,000 to each of my grandchildren, or something like that. People do that. But there's a better way to do it. The big point, though, is this. Don't divide up the money. Keep the money together. So instead of dividing up the money between your estate, put that money into a trust, and your entire estate benefits from the trust because they're all beneficiaries of the trust. So that's step one. Step two, make your trust self-replenishing. Now, this is the part that blew my mind when I first heard about it. Okay? So, you know, you set up the trust and you put your life savings in there so that when you die, the trust has your life savings, the trust has your assets. Let's say if you have a bunch of rental houses, whatever you have, right? The trust owns all this stuff when you die. But how do you keep the money coming into that trust so that the trust doesn't run out of cash? Well, you can do something that you can implement a strategy that was first put into practice by GE. You ever heard of GE, General Electric, a big mega conglomerate company here in the US, right? GE. What they did is when they were in the growth stage, they were trying to attract top management talent to their company. And in order to attract the top management talent, they had to pay exorbitant amounts of salaries to these guys to get these guys to leave these other companies to come to work for GE. And so what the GE executives came up with was a great idea. They said, look, we will bring you over here, but we want the company to own a life insurance policy on each of you guys that comes over to work for us. And so GE pays the premiums to put life insurance on all of their executives. They may still do that to this day. I don't really know. But it was a great idea because here's what happens. So they bring these executives over. They pay these guys a really fat salary, but they keep this life insurance policy in place. Even after these guys retire, the company still owns these life insurance policies. And eventually, you know what happens to all of us, right? We all die. And when these executives started to die off, guess what happened? GE was reimbursed all that money that they had paid these people because they bought enough insurance on these gentlemen to reimburse GE for their entire salaries plus some. What a brilliant, brilliant strategy, right? And guess what? It's also happening in the sporting world. I don't know if you know this, but it's not unusual for these sporting teams, baseball teams, basketball teams, hockey teams, for the owners to buy life insurance policies on their star players. That's not unusual at all. And they pay these star players millions and millions of dollars. So, for example, they might pay a star player $10 million, but then they put a $20 million life insurance policy on him. And when he dies or she dies, guess what? The team owners receive the $20 million life insurance payout. So the fact that they paid them $10 million to work for them or to play for their team is no big deal. And I just think it's brilliant. It's just brilliant strategy. And that's why I'm sharing this with you guys. So that's the second point. First point is keep the money together. Second point is making your trust self-replenishing. The third point is this: build your values into your trust. Just like John D. Rockefeller did, right? He shared his values with his heirs. Now, with a properly structured trust, and by the way, it can't be just a regular old trust that you might get from an attorney, right? We all know about these revocable living trusts or irrevocable living trusts, either one. It's just a living trust. The problem with living trust is the living trust dies shortly after you die, okay? But if you create a dynasty trusts last for generations. As a matter of fact, there's some states that allow dynasty trusts that never expire, but most of them expire somewhere between 300 and 400 years. There's only 5 states that even allow dynasty trusts. And so you work with the states that allow dynasty trust, you have your trust created there. And for example, I had my trust created in Tennessee because they allow for a dynasty trust of 360 years. You know, that's a long time. 360 years. So with a properly structured dynasty trust, your heirs won't grow up to become spoiled, self-entitled, socialite trust fund babies like the Vanderbilts that don't know anything except how to spend money that they didn't earn. But instead, by properly structuring your trust, you can leave behind more than money. You can pass on your values. You can pass on life lessons that you learned, that you want your kids and grandkids to benefit from, so they don't have to go through what you went through. And you can do that generation after generation after generation by putting that stuff right into your trust. And so rather than simply leaving the stuff that you amassed over your lifetime to the next generation, you leave a legacy of sustainable wealth, timeless wisdom that empowers your heirs. Wow, that's good stuff. See, your family banking dynasty trust can act as a launching pad or even a booster rocket to help your heirs reach their goals and their dreams faster. It's going to serve as a kind of financial GPS to help them navigate their world as they create financial freedom for themselves and for their own families. You know, you've always heard the old saying, we've all heard this old saying, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. But if you teach him to fish, you feed him for life, right? Well, guess what a dynasty trust does? A dynasty trust does both. You feed them today and you teach them for tomorrow. Your dynasty trust is going to give your heirs a fish so they can eat now and teach them so that they can fish and live a good life moving forward. So it's giving and teaching. For example, in your dynasty trust, you can say, look, if you want to buy a house, the trust will pay your down payment. However, one of the conditions of getting the down payment from the trust is that you must attend, if it's your first home, you must attend a first-time home buyer training class so that you know what it means to be a homeowner, how to take care of a home, how to manage that whole process, right? Because so many people buy homes and they don't really understand what it means to be a homeowner. And so you can require that. Another example, you can say, okay, the trust will pay for your wedding if you and your fiance attend a 90-day premarital counseling session, something like that, right? If that's important, if you feel like that's important. In my case, I would make it a Christian-based premarital counseling that they'd have to go through. But if they go through that, then the trust will pay for their wedding or pay for half their wedding or to give them a big dowry or something, right? We can choose whatever we want to do. Another example might be, like in my case here, the trust will pay for the education for your children if they attend Christian-based schools. Now that's just me. You could say whatever you want to say if you're creating the Dynasty Trust, you know? Now, if you happen to have someone in your family like I do that considers themselves not to be a Christian, I do have a person in my family that says, "Well, I'm not a Christian, so that won't help me." And I said, "Well, then that's fine. Then you make up your own trust." Okay, my trust requires that if you want to take advantage of this stuff, then you must be a Christian. If you want to use the money to go to pay for your kids to go to school, you can make up your own trust and fund it with your own money and do whatever you want to do. But all the other benefits of the trust you can still take advantage of because they're not all tied to that, right? So your dynasty trust is going to create symbols and rituals and traditions that serve as signposts for future generations. Like right now, every year we have a family meeting. I guess you could almost call it a family reunion, but it's not. It's a family business meeting, and we all get together. I bring in family members from all over the country that are part of my direct descendants from all over the country, and they come in and we meet. And I do that because I want my family to become closer. That's why I do that. I don't want us to grow apart, right? And so I think that if we can get together once a year, we all hang out together, we break bread together, it's just a better thing. We also have a family Facebook group, that we all participate in, and we share what's going on in our lives and in the lives of our children and our grandchildren and all that. That's all part of it. That's what I'm talking about here. So, guys, your dynasty trust is a game changer in your family. Most families don't have this. And by the way, you don't need to be wealthy to have a dynasty trust. Okay? And over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be sharing for today and 3 more weeks, right? 3 more sessions. I'm going to be sharing with you guys the strategies that I personally put into place to create my family's dynasty trust and to fund it and how we use it so that you guys can see that investing brilliantly is not just about investing in stuff out there. I'm making an investment in my family. You see that? Because my family is one of my resources, right? And we talk about using your resources to their fullest. My family is one of my resources. And I want to invest in my family. And I'm sure that some of you guys do too. And this is a great way to do it. So over the next 3 weeks, come on and join me here for that. So I thought that was pretty cool. I do have some other things I want to show you guys a little bit more about the Dynasty Trust. Mr. Producer, do we have any questions or comments that I need to address? Because I don't get to see all this stuff on my side here. So if there's anything on YouTube or Facebook, any questions or comments that I can address right here, I'd like to do so. So I've got my producer. He is there working behind the scenes, right? Keeping things going. And he'll put it into the chat for me. There he is, Mr. Producer. Anything for me, sir? You are muted, I think. There we go. Okay, so not yet. Very good. Thank you, sir. Not a problem. So if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I do want to show you guys a little PowerPoint here about this whole Dynasty Trust because I really want you guys to understand what it is. Once you get it, most of you guys will want to embrace this, and you may even feel like you want to teach it to your kids and your grandkids. So, Mr. Producer, I'm getting a little feedback from your side there. Okay. So if there's anything you can do, let's see here. All right, Mr. Producer, can you step back? Okay. Can you step back, sir? Because you're still on my screen and I'm getting feedback from your side. All right, so guys, I'm going to share my screen with you guys again, and this time I'm going to show you a PowerPoint that I put together to just kind of help you understand how this stuff works. Okay, so let's see here. Mr. Producer, I'm still getting noise from your side, sir. Okay. I'm still getting noise. So if you can get rid of that, no, thank you. There we go. All right. So guys, here's my screen. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share with you about this Dynasty Trust thing because this is a big deal. Okay, a Dynasty Trust, as I said earlier, lasts generations, not just 30 years after you die. Right? It lasts beyond that. My Dynasty Trust lasts 360 years. That's a long time. The U.S. is only 200, not even 250 years old. This whole country. So my Dynasty Trust is going to last a lot longer than this country's even been around. Okay, so let me just show you guys, show you how this works. A trust is basically a written contract of governance and administration of the wishes of the trust creator. So it's a document that basically says, this is what I want to happen for the beneficiaries of this trust as regarding any assets that we transferred into the trust. And if you think of a trust like a big barrel or something, you put stuff into a barrel, right? Same thing, you put stuff into a trust by putting the title to like your vehicles, the title to your bank accounts, the title to your houses, all of that. You put all that in the name of the trust. It's a power, and a dynasty is a powerful family that maintains its position for a considerable length of time. That's what a dynasty is. Okay, so if you combine the dynasty and the trust, you got a powerful family that maintains its position for generations and executes on your wishes. That's what a dynasty trust does. Okay, so if you have assets like life insurance, right? This is one of the things that I use to put into my own trust. I bought life insurance on my various family members. And I buy life insurance policies on all of my family members because by using these life insurance properly, we're able to make our trust self-funding over time. And I'm going to share that with you guys over the next 3 weeks, how that stuff works. But for example here, let's say that I bought on myself $500,000 on me, $500,000 on mom. So when we die, there's $1 million right there going into the family trust. Just right there, okay? And then we have insurance on our kids and on our grandkids and on our great-grandkids. And we're all going to die. And so as we all die, more and more money gets added into the family trust. That's the idea behind it. Okay? Now, the parties to a trust, when you create a trust, is you have a grantor. That's the person that has created the trust. You have the trustee. That's the person that manages things for you. Now, the grantor can also be the trustee. Like in my case, while I'm alive, I am the trustee. After I die, I've designated a family member to be the trustee, to manage things. And so, you want to look to responsible people to step into your shoes after you're gone. And then there are the beneficiaries of the trust. The beneficiary, the root word for beneficiary is benefits, right? Those are the people that benefit from the fact that there is a trust. They are the ones who can tap into the money that's in the trust. They can use some of the money to go to school, to pay for weddings, to buy a house, to whatever, buy cars or whatever, right? They also can get annual or monthly or quarterly payouts from the trust if the trust allows for that. And my trust does. So those kinds of things are paid out to the beneficiaries. Then there's a trust protector. A trust protector is an outside party that basically looks over everything. It could be an attorney, it could be an entire law firm, it could be a CPA, or it could just be a person that you trust to kind of look over things and make sure that the trustee, after you're gone, that the trustee doesn't take advantage of the trust, doesn't abuse the beneficiaries in any way, that kind of thing. I think the trust protector should be an entity, not just one person that you know. I think you should use like a Bank of America or something like that that's going to be around for a long, long time, right? Then there's a family board. Now, I created a family board in our family with 5 members, and all the members have to be a minimum certain age, okay? Because I don't want teenagers being on a family board, right? So all the members of the family board have to be a minimum of a certain age. And the family board's job is to serve as advisors for the trustee and to serve as, I'll say, like adjudicators for problems between family members. We don't want to air our dirty laundry by going to court, suing each other, all that kind of stuff. So we have a family board. And if you have a grievance with a family member, you literally go before the board and voice your grievance. And the board makes a decision about the grievance. And that's how we've structured that. Okay? Just something else that you can do. Now, the trust banking strategy is this. Stop saving your money in a bank. So if you have a savings account and you have your money in a savings account, take it out of the savings account, put it into your family trust inside your insurance policies. Stop saving your money inside your IRAs and 401ks. It's been about, I say, a year and a half now, I think, since I shut down my IRA. I had a Roth IRA. I shut it down and I put all of my money into my family trust inside our insurance policies. Use your savings to buy insurance on all the family members, but you want to buy a very specific type of insurance. It's called high cash value whole life insurance. It's an insurance policy that has been structured in a very specific way. And I'm going to tell you this right up front. 99% of life insurance agents do not know how to structure these policies properly. So don't think, oh, I'm going to go to my brother-in-law and get some insurance, have him do it. He won't know what to do. Unless he's been specifically trained for how to structure these policies, which most guys are not, he won't know what to do. And he's just going to sell you a policy and it won't accomplish the things that you need to get accomplished. And you're going to learn that, as I said, over the next 3 weeks. You're going to learn exactly how important that is and why you want to use certain agents to structure these policies in specific fashions. The next strategy is to insure every family member. The trust is going to pay for the premiums on every family member. Okay? On every family member. You don't have to buy a lot of life insurance. It can be a small amount of life insurance. It doesn't matter. See, that's why I said you don't have to be rich to do this. You can buy, like, for example, I got insurance on my grandchildren. It cost me $300 a year. A year. That's nothing. And that gets them well over $100,000 in life insurance. And it never goes up for their whole life. Even when they're 80 years old, it's still only $300, right? So $300 a year. But here's what does happen. Year after year, the amount of death benefit goes up. So, for example, one of my great granddaughters, I've got her covered, and I think it's like $300 or $350 for the year. And right now, she's only got about $110,000 worth of death benefit. But if she lives to be 80 years old, that death benefit that goes to the trust is more than $1 million. And we got all that for $300 a year. In 10 years, it's $3,000, right? In 50 years, whatever that is, right? Just do the math, right? It's not very much money to be getting more than $1 million paid into the family trust. And that's the point. And by the way, when you structure these policies properly, you only have to pay them for maybe the first 5 to 7 years. After that, they self-fund. When you structure these policies properly, they self-fund, and nobody has to pay the premiums. Okay? And you can buy multiple policies on each person, because what you're going to be doing is using your family banking trust as a family bank. So when people need money, okay. Patrick says he funded his policy today. Now I need to get my Dynasty Trust set up ASAP. That's exactly right, Patrick. You want to do that. Good for you, buddy. Good for you. When you use these as a family bank, when people need money, they can literally take loans from your family bank rather than going and borrowing money from, for example, Wells Fargo, right? Or Visa. Instead of doing that, borrow money from your family bank. If they're going to pay interest, why not pay interest back to the family banking trust? That way, the money is still available for the next family member. Because if you pay interest to a bank outside of your family, guess what? That money's gone forever. The interest is gone forever. All of it. It's just gone forever. It's never coming back into your family. So you want to buy multiple policies on people. We're going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk about why that is over the next week or two. Okay? So that's the strategies that I'm talking about. The other part of the strategy is you want to build in your values. You do that into the trust itself, in the trust document. You can have life lessons that you want your family members to learn. And you can use access to the trust funds as leverage to get them to learn it. For example, if you want them to learn a particular Bible verse, then you could literally put that into the trust. You can put anything in there. You create this trust. Whatever you think is of value to the next generation, and you don't want them to forget it, then you put that into your trust. Isn't that crazy cool? That's crazy cool, okay? Your spiritual lessons, your life, your financial lessons, life lessons, lessons about marriage, lessons about health, lessons about exercise, things that you feel are valuable, you can put that into your trust, and you can make that a part of the legacy that you leave behind. I love that. Okay. Hey guys, those of you that are part of this event today, if you're liking what I'm talking about, do me a favor. Hit the like button, thumbs up, put a comment. As a matter of fact, put in there, I'm digging it. Put that right into the comments on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you're watching this, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this. I'm digging it. Family Trust, Dynasty Trust, okay? I'm digging it. Guys, let me go on here. Now, the other thing that you're going to do when you design your trust is you're going to design the benefit strategy, right? How do people that are the beneficiaries, how do they benefit from the trust? You decide that. You and your attorney will figure out, here's some ways that they could benefit, and then you just decide what you want to include or exclude as benefits. For example, how can they access money? In my case, I set mine up so that people have two ways to access the money. Once a year, after the trust has a certain amount of money in it, once a year, each direct descendant will receive a payout from the trust. Just cash. Here you go. Boom. It could be $5,000. It could be $10,000. It could be $100,000. Depends on how much money is in the trust. But each direct descendant gets a payout. That's part of what I put together. That's called a distribution. The other thing is this. Any direct descendant can borrow money from the trust. So if they want to go and buy a car, if there's enough money in the trust, they can borrow the money to buy the car right from the trust and make their monthly payments back to the trust with interest instead of paying interest to Toyota or Mercedes Finance, right? They pay interest into the trust. And then that way, the next family member that wants to buy a car, there's money there to do it. Isn't that just a brilliant strategy? You can also give grants. Like in my case, I put grants in our trust for people that accomplish certain things. For example, if you think it's important that your heirs get a college degree, you could literally say, okay, once you graduate from college with a certain grade point average, whatever you put in there, right? Then you will receive a grant from the trust of $50,000, $5,000, whatever you want to do. And you could, of course, put charitable clauses in there like the Rockefellers did. You can say that this trust is going to be donating to charitable events, or that each recipient, each person, each beneficiary, when they're taking money from the trust, needs to donate a certain amount to certain charities of their choice or whatever. So those are the ways you can design your benefits strategies. And your attorney will give you lots of other ideas. And then you can also design a family board, like I mentioned, right? You can decide who can sit on the board, how big will your board be, what are the powers that your board will have with inside the trust, that kind of thing. Really good stuff, guys. So I hope you guys see that this series is a life-changing series, and this is the stuff that people don't talk about. Certainly, you don't learn this stuff in college, right? You don't learn this stuff in college. Your professors don't know this stuff. Your bosses don't know this stuff. You guys are learning some things that wealthy families do. And I didn't know this myself until I became wealthy and I started hanging out with wealthy people. And in particular, one of my partners in a real estate deal, he's a doctor and his family's wealthy. And he shared with me that his grandfather had set up a family dynasty trust years and years ago when he was just a kid. And he used that to pay for his college education, to pay for his medical degree, and also to buy a building to run his practice from. And each month he pays the mortgage payments to the family trust instead of mortgage payments to some big bank that the money would leave the family forever. I don't know about you, but I just, again, you know that Guinness commercial for beer, Guinness beer, brilliant, brilliant. I love it. It's brilliant. And so when I saw that, I thought, I got to do that. I got to do that. And as I said, you don't have to be rich to do this. You start wherever you can start. If all you can start with is $25,000 life insurance policies that cost $100 a year, right? Then do that. Start someplace. You can always add more policies. And also, as I said, the policies become self-funding at some point anyway, right? So do that, guys. I'm thinking this. I've gone through the message that I want to give to you guys today. I hope you guys have found that this information is valuable, and I hope that you will embrace this, right? I just want to remind you guys, like this video, share it, invite people to come back next Thursday at the same time, and watch to hear the next part of this 4-part series, because this is the stuff that changes lives, okay? And then at the end, I'm going to show you guys how to use this to actually invest your money through your trust, through your insurance policies, into cash flowing vehicles like mortgage-backed promissory notes. Okay, we're going to tie it all together at the very end. So, Mr. Producer, before I wrap this up, let me ask you, sir, are there any comments or questions that I need to address in the chat? If so, please throw them into the chat. I know that you're monitoring the chats on social media, the various channels, and so forth. Okay. Well, very good. Very good. So I want to remind you guys also that you can learn these strategies and so many others that change your life, change the trajectory of your family's life, that gets you out of living paycheck to paycheck, that literally can create wealth for you and your family now, and wealth that you can pass on to the next generations by heading over to noteinvestoruniversity.com. That's our sponsor, noteinvestoruniversity.com, where you can learn more about how we, as a part of our community, work together to grow our wealth together. You know, President John Kennedy once made a statement. He says, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? Guys, we're in the boats together. And so you'll probably want to head over to Note Investor University. Consider joining our community. Our community meets every Saturday for an hour and a half on Saturday mornings. And we talk about investing. We talk about trainings. We do coaching. We talk about things like this, strategies. We do networking. We make investments together. So it's a great place to be. You know, who you hang around with matters. We all understand that. We understand that. We know that because we tell our kids, hey, you're hanging around with the wrong crowd, right? But yet we go and hang around with a bunch of broke people. Get out of that. There's some people that you can spend a little time with, but not a lot of time, right? You can spend a few minutes, but not a few hours. There's some people you can spend a few hours with, but not a few days. I'm not saying you need to take everybody out of your life, but I'm simply saying pay attention to who you are hanging around with. Spend as much time as you can with people who have what you want, people who are going where you want to go, and start to develop those relationships. Okay? And you can do that by heading over to noteinvestoruniversity.com, looking at our programs, checking us out, joining us. You can even join us as a guest one time on a Saturday to see what we're all about, kind of like taking a peek behind the curtain. We allow that. But you need to head over to noteinvestoruniversity.com, put your contact information in there, and one of our success managers will reach out to you and help you and answer any questions that you have and get you a guest invitation. One last time, guys, don't forget, please like this video, share this video, comment on this video. Give me some love, okay? Give me some love if you like this. Give me some hate, but give me some comments. I don't mind haters. I'm at the point in my life now, I don't care what you have to say if you're a hater. I'm rich. Okay. I got rich doing what I'm teaching you guys how to do. And it didn't take long. So you can be a hater if you want. Just be a broke hater. I don't care. It ain't a problem for me. Okay. I'm just trying to give back. I'll be 71 years old here in less than 2 months, right? And I'm just trying to give back. I don't have to do this. I just enjoy doing this. And that's why I'm doing it. You don't have to follow what I'm teaching. You can do whatever you want to do. But I'm telling you, if you will embrace what I teach, your life will never, ever, ever be the same. You can literally get the money thing out of the way forever and never have to worry about money again. Can you imagine that? Never having to worry about money again? That's what I'm talking about here, guys. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, look, guys, I'm going to wrap this up and call it a day. I hope to see you guys next Thursday. In between now and then, tell your friends, tell your family members. You guys need to see this. This is the stuff that changes lives. So get some people on to the call next Thursday. Get them watching this one. It's going to be on the YouTube channel. It's going to be on Facebook. And they can watch the replays on this one so they can get a handle on it. And they'll be up to speed for next week. God bless you all. I'll see you all next week.